Welcome back to the show, and today, my friends, we're going to be discussing Microsoft's game development woes, what we're likely to see from Xbox for the rest of the year, and how they're going to handle the Starfield Redfall delays. And if you enjoy the episode and want to see more industry analysis, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel as we move ever closer to that 1,000 sub goal. Now, without any further ado, let's get into the topic for today, because even the most die-hard Xbox fan would have to admit that it's been a quiet first half of the gaming year for Microsoft. The offering from the entertainment giant's first-party studios has been all but non-existent, and that cold streak stands in stark contrast to the performance of PlayStation's in-house studios, which so far this year have published games the likes of Horizon Forbidden West, Sifu, and Gran Turismo 7. And of course, on the Sony side of things, you've also got God of War Ragnarok, one of the most highly anticipated PlayStation titles of all time, just around the corner, either later this year as promised or more likely in early 2023. Anyway, you get the picture. Xbox hasn't measured up well, but that doesn't mean that the fans have been starving out there, as third-party developers have stepped up in 2022, releasing games like Elden Ring and Dying Light 2, while others like Hogwarts Legacy, Saints Row, The Quarry, and Outriders World Slayer are set to release in the coming months. However, let's be honest, nothing gets the masses stirred up like a big-budget first-party title, and gamers who invested in the Xbox ecosystem have been forced to sit back and wait for the second half of the year for the release of highly anticipated in-house Game Pass titles like Starfield and Redfall. So obviously, when the news came last week that both Starfield and Redfall were going to be delayed until the first half of 2023, well, let's just say that it made a lot of Xbox gamers, including myself, incredibly disappointed. And don't get me wrong, if devs need more time to polish and finish a game while avoiding crunch, then they should absolutely take it. We don't need any more rushed games hitting the market. But at the same time, Xbox just lost the two most hyped first-party games of 2022. And as it stands, prior to the July showcase, we have little to no idea what they're actually going to offer us for the rest of the year. And it's missteps like this, along with the overall uncertainty as to the timing of Microsoft's software offering, that reinforces the idea in gamers' heads that Microsoft simply can't be trusted to reliably publish high-quality games at anything approaching a regular cadence, and that perception causes the company to lose momentum in the public eye. But of course, that isn't entirely fair. Granted, Xbox's offering over recent years has been pretty sporadic, but there are very good reasons for that. For starters, over the past couple of years, the entire world has been rocked by a global pandemic which has fundamentally altered everything from how we work and live our lives to global supply chains. The games industry is not immune from this disruption. The entire industry was uprooted from their in-person studios and forced to work from home. Workflows were upended, and everyone from bug testers to motion capture teams and sound engineers had to find innovative new ways of working around the colossal creative roadblock that was social distancing. So work continued in that time, but it was a whole lot slower, so make no mistake, the development backlogs and endemic game delays that we see today come as a direct result of the COVID pandemic. Beyond that, it's also worth noting that the primary way that Xbox has been growing its number of studios is through large-scale acquisitions, and the process of being absorbed by another commercial entity of that size understandably can lead to some delays in the creative process. And then there's the fact that developers are currently developing their games on a brand new system, and it takes extra time to work out how to get the most out of that new hardware. And the development process becomes even more tricky and time-consuming if you choose to develop your game on a cross-generational basis for both the series consoles and the older Xbox One platform. But the fact that we now largely understand the why of Microsoft's development woes doesn't change the cold hard fact that Xbox now finds itself with a gaping hole in its first-party lineup for the second half of 2022. And that's a pretty staggering state of affairs, considering that they own 23 studios and more IPs than God even before the announcement of the Activision Blizzard acquisition. So how will Microsoft quote-unquote react to the delay, and how will it change what we're going to see in the Xbox July conference? Well, honestly, I think that pretty much nothing is going to change regarding their strategy for the Bethesda Heavy July presentation and beyond. I've seen some people suggest that they could decide to hold Starfield back from the showcase altogether in favor of showing it in its own event later in the year when it'll be in a more polished state. Straight up, I just don't think that's going to be the case. This delay is news to us, but it wouldn't have been nearly as shocking to Xbox management and those directly in charge of putting the July presentation together. Hell, Jason Schreier let on recently that he had heard misgivings from the team behind Starfield about being ready for the 11/11/22 release date as early as spring last year. You've got to imagine that these concerns were also made known on some level to those inside the company, or it just points to another example of a critical breakdown in communication in the video games industry. But I don't think that's the case, and regardless, in my opinion, Xbox management had a high level of confidence in the gameplay that they were planning to show at the event. This is evident to me in the fact that it is, after all, being specifically billed as the Xbox and Bethesda showcase. And you don't put the emphasis on Bethesda like that unless you're planning on showing off the Bethesda game that everyone is hyped for, and that is of course Starfield. And Xbox reinforced that expectation by placing their logo against a literal Starfield in the blog post announcing the showcase. So in my not so humble opinion, they knew at that stage what content they were getting from Bethesda. They were happy with it, and the subsequent reveal to the public that the game had been delayed to the next year won't have changed any of that. We're going to be seeing it at the event, and for everything else that I'm expecting to see, go check out my prediction video, which I'll link to at the end. Now, will this strategy lead to a deepening of the public perception problem that I mentioned earlier? Well, yeah, it probably will in the short term, and beyond that, it's certainly going to give some of the console warriors on the PlayStation side some irritating talking points. But honestly, just let them talk, because the reality is that right now, Xbox is an absolute powerhouse. It has a vast number of studios working on a great many games, all of which are inevitably moving closer to release over the space of the next 5 years. We're talking Starfield, Redfall, Perfect Dark, Avowed, State of Decay 3, Fable, Hellblade, Indiana Jones, Gears of War, The Outer Worlds 2, and Forza 8, just to name a few, and on top of that, there are numerous unannounced projects that are ripening in the background. And I'll grant you, one or two of those are pretty far away to say the least, but the fact is that from early 2023 onwards, starting with Starfield and Redfall, we are going to see a reliable stream of high-quality first-party games hit the platform and Game Pass on day one. At that point, any perceived lack of momentum is sure to vanish like so much smoke on the wind, and the Game Pass numbers are going to go through the roof because once development fully returns to normality, and assuming that Xbox staggers their game releases well to avoid conflicting with one another or any major third-party launches, well, it's safe to say that Xbox fans are rarely going to go hungry again. In light of that, I really don't think Microsoft need to react in any major way to these developments. They can happily take some bruises over the next few months, safe in the knowledge of their longer-term plans. And come on, it's not even like there are literally no games coming out. We could well see Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 from developers Ninja Theory, and I don't know, maybe Scorn, the Geiger-esque survival horror game from Ebb Software. And if the stars really align, perhaps we could even see the debut of the next Forza Motorsport game. On top of that, there's a couple of major third-party games like Hogwarts Legacy and Gotham Knights coming out in the holiday season, and those are sure to distract a lot of Xbox fans from the lack of Starfield. Sadly though, while Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl does currently have a December release date, I just can't see the Ukrainian-based team hitting that deadline, so that's probably going to slip to 2023 along with Starfield and Redfall. Now, the major drawback to the perceived torpor and lack of momentum resulting from the Starfield Redfall delay is that Microsoft could well see a significant slow in the number of new gamers subscribing to Game Pass, and obviously they'd be seriously reluctant to lose an ounce of momentum there. To counter that, we could well see Xbox try and land a major third-party game as a day one Game Pass title, and I would love for that to be WB Montreal's Gotham Knights, but let's be honest, I'm probably being a little bit too ambitious there, so let me know what you think could fill that third-party gap. And that's it for today's video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the episode, and to let me know what you think in the comment section below. In the meantime, be sure to keep it here for all the biggest news, reviews, and reactions from across the video gaming industry.